I gazed out the car window to the sea beyond the coastal cliff's edge. The road swayed and swerved through the heath. Our destination was Aris' home. He invited me to live with him in the wake of my recently failed marriage. Aris was a good friend to me. In the distance, I could already see his home. A massive wooden marvel, with the likeness of a castle of yore. The winding road gradually became straighter as we approached the driveway. Soon we were disembarking from the car and to the front door. As we approached, I was overtaken by the sheer size of the house. It reached up monstrously high, blotting out the blue sky that framed the vista of cliffs and seas. We stepped into the door. Immediately inside, I found myself in an encroaching dim hallway, the walls of which were intricately decorated, with paintings hanging within decorative alcoves. "In your time of need, my home is yours, dear Oliver," Aris consoled, trying to make me feel even more welcome. "I can never repay your kindness, my friend," I remarked. "Nonsense. It is out of my love for a friend that I have chosen to take you under my wing in your time of need." That night, Aris entertained his beloved guest with wine, playing cards, and wondrous stories involving his numerous keepsakes. Were it not for my current situation, I would have taken no interest in his anecdotes. Aris was a good friend. I was not. To this day, I am befuddled as to why he enjoyed my company, going so far as to allow me to stay with him in my time of need. I had done nothing for him. He owed me nothing. Aris was a good friend. I was not. The night had surpassed its youth, and we decided to retire to our rooms for its duration. He chauffeured me to the third floor. At the apex of the staircase, we entered a dim hallway. There were 4 doors. To the left, there was 1 door. "This is my chamber here," he signaled to the door. "This one is yours." He pointed to the far door on the right. "And this is the bathroom." He pointed to the one next to it. I noticed there was 1 more door, one at the end of the hall. Aris did not mention this one. This strangely captivated me. "I hope you do sleep well tonight, my friend," he said as he opened the door to my chamber. I stepped over the threshold, wished him the same, and closed the door. The door at the end of the hall faded from my mind soon after. In a matter of minutes, I was lying on the bed. It cradled my withered body, the way only a mother or devout lover could. My eyes rested dutifully as a series of recollections clawed at the walls of my mind. Images from the ages of my life played out like a slideshow. Precious moments with dear old friends, meeting my precious Amanda, and how our love faded and died. The last thing she told me, that I could never learn to love anybody. That I was just an asshole. Suddenly I found myself restless. The restful abandon that had soothed me prior was gone, replaced with the gripping anxiety that controlled me during these days. I could not return to sleep. I sat in a wooden rocking chair by the window. I gazed out onto the blackened sea below, glistening in the moonlight like the tears that now ran down my cheekbone. The lamp next to me offered a warm orange glow and cast hard shadows over anything not exposed directly to the light. It provided the light which illuminated the pages of the book I borrowed from Aris' shelf. The lamplight was like me. It only cast light on one side of anything it sees. The rest was shrouded in darkness and mystery. Every object in the room had a darker side, including I. The lamp could only see one side of everything. Like me, I could only see one side of the door. Aris had not introduced the nature of the door. What could it conceal that he would not desire me to know? Could it be just another spare bedroom? A master bath? Just storage, perhaps? It was a small thing, but a part of me could not shake the primal desire to know. I had to know. Perhaps simply knowing would bring peace to all my mental turmoil. I had to know. I stood from my roost and placed the book back upon the table next to me. I tenderly pushed the chamber door open. The hallway was darker than before. Only the dim, orange glow of the lamp emanating from my room illuminated a sliver of the abysmal hall. Through the darkness I could barely make out the shape of the door. The knob reflected what tiny light that dare shone on it. I crept forward anxiously. I did not want to disturb Aris. As good of a friend he was, I could not desire to explain what I was doing in that night. Each step gave me infinite anxiety. I did not know what floorboard would wail upon my step. It felt like an eternity when I finally reached the door. I could not see any of its detail. Gingerly, I reached out for the handle. I had to feel for it in the dark, and eventually found it when my hand struck it, producing a loud, metallic thud. I listened for stirring in the dark from Aris, and thought I heard him, but it was only in my imagination. I grabbed the knob and turned it. Locked. The door that had captivated me, inaccessible. For minutes on end I stood facing that door, until my legs began to tingle, and I felt cold and lost in the utter darkness. What reason would Aris have to lock this door? Aris clearly had secrets. A good friend would respect his right to it, but I am not. I turned away from the door to face the hall. The only thing I could see was the light pouring out of my slightly ajar door. Standing here in the darkened hall, I felt naked, exposed. I could hear every pop of wood in the shifting and settling house. Every time I heard it, my heart would pound harder. I wanted to walk back into my room, but I felt like I was underwater, chained to a stone, drowning and immobile. Eventually, I finally built up the constitution to move again. I strode to my door and slipped in fluidly. Once again, I settled in my wooden chair. I sat and contemplated. What reason did Aris have to restrict his dearest friend from a portion of the house that he said is now mine as well? He had no right to restrict this from me. My mind began to wander to the infinite possibilities of what lay behind the door. Could Aris be a collector of rare, priceless artifacts? Perhaps a showcase is overthinking it. It could possibly be his treasury. Would he keep his wealth in such a room? That would certainly warrant locking the door. But what if it were not something so mundane? This, after all, was his home. This is his castle. All of his secrets, all of the actions he hides, his shameful desires. This was the place to enact them, if at all. Perhaps Aris held untasteful desires. Could he possibly be an nymphomaniac? Did the door hide some kind of debaucherous dungeon? I could see it through some means. Whether it be collecting concubines with his automobile, or convincing the unfaithful wives of friends, somehow he may amass an orgy to which he may escort into the room. One by one, they would fill the room and assume the positions according to Aris' erotic desires. Perhaps Aris had sealed away Amanda, my precious Amanda, and boasted a manhood superior to mine, and convinced her that I was an undesirable lover. I deemed that impossible. It wouldn't be likely that he would invite me to live in his home after such a scandal. Unless he meant to remove me from the picture. Was Aris planning to murder me to steal my Amanda? Did his mysterious room contain a chamber of torture? I could see that playing out in my head as well. I knew not how many best friends he had known before I could have been the last in the series of dear friends to be invited to his home, saboteured in the night, dragged down the hall into the room of death, from which there was no return. Was my friend capable of this? Was he even my friend? I am no friend of his, therefore he is nary a friend of mine. He is my captor. He has captured me and plans to drag me into his room of murder. By God, how have I been so blind? That would explain his unnerving hospitality. He had no dues to pay me. I had not warranted his kindness. It must have been a farce. To capture me. Why else would he invite me in, and taunt me with the prospect of what lies beyond that goddamn door? The sound of a door creaking open snapped me back to alertness. Aris was coming for me. By God, I was not going to let this despicable wretch enact his plan of sadistic pleasure. His feet made the boards moan as he crossed the hall to my still slightly ajar door. Each second that elapsed made my heart beat more profoundly. Suddenly, the umbra of a man slid through the doorway. I panicked. I turned the lamp off. The warmth of the orange glow was replaced by the solemn shadowscape of utter darkness. The only light in the room was a small square of cold blue moonlight casted through the window. I grabbed the hardback book I'd been reading. In one fluid motion, I stepped forward and struck his head with the corner of the book. He instantly fell to the floor with a thud. Again, I bludgeoned his skull, and again, and again. I kept striking him until I could feel the hot blood pouring from his body like velvet, smooth and costly, pulling around his shoulders and my bare feet. There was no doubt that he was dead. He could not enact his dastardly plan on me, his stolen victim. I had outsmarted my vile captor. My mind was a blank for the first time tonight. I felt nothing, and many things all at once. I felt relief. I felt clever. I felt safe. I felt no fear of the law, for I was defending myself against an aggressor. I now had my chance to open the door. I was the only one there. There was no point now, only to prove or disprove my theory that I now realized was just that, a theory. Regardless, I found myself crossing the hallway into Ara's room. The key was easy enough to find with the light on. It was only in a drawer near the hallway door. I once again approached the mysterious door. In the dim light, it was difficult to find the keyhole, but find it I did. I slid the key in, turned it, and heard the click of the tumblers. I hesitated. What was the point now? I suppose it didn't matter. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was dark, too dark to see. I felt for a light switch, found it, and flipped it to find a linen closet. My heart sank. There was no murder plot, no affair. I killed no captor. Just my only friend. He was a good friend. I was not. For the first time in my life, I felt completely guilty, so much so that I phoned the police and turned myself in. There I sat, in the police station, blanket draped over me, teacup in hand. The police were thanking me, telling me I was a hero. In my hysteria about the door, the basement had never come into my mind. I had killed a renowned menace, who had kidnapped, abused, and murdered several men. I was next, but I thank God that I wasn't a good friend.